Hey guys, I'm sorry the show's a little bit late today. Had kind of an emergency we had to handle. I'm here with my buddy Gary. We're going to talk about the four best games in college football this weekend. We're going to see what kind of numbers Gary has on these. Gary, I think the first game, probably not the most important game, but the first game I'd like to talk about is Texas A&M versus Florida. What kind of line do you have on this game?
So we are now at the point of the season where I'm starting to look at stats projections along with power ratings, right? So there's still just a teensy bit of priors in here. I don't like to keep the priors in forever. Obviously, there's some people that keep them in all the way through, the middle of the year, but not me. I feel like these teams are completely different year to year. Right now, the spread that I saw initially was A&M minus 3.5. So I'm not totally certain exactly what it is right this second. Stats projection, I've got A&M minus 8.5. And with the power ratings and the stats projection put together, I've actually got A&M by about 5.5 points. So I like A&M this weekend, especially if that line is still around, field goal 3.5 or so. Anything probably under 4, I would feel pretty good about. Uh, but you never know, right? This Florida team, all of those stats from week 1 are baked in there. Last week, it was DJ Lagway at quarterback. The week before, it was Graham Mertz. We don't know which one's going to play this weekend. I like A&M, but at the same time, I mean, they did not look good against Notre Dame, and we see what Notre Dame was last week against Northern Illinois. So,
Exactly.
both of these teams are basically Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know which one's going to bother showing up, and I think that's what makes college football fun because we have no idea what to expect here. If I had to put a number down, I'd go with the A&M, probably around 5.5 to 6.
Well, I think you might be a little bit disappointed here because I'm right now. I've got Spank odds pulled up,
Mm-hmm.
and that line is moving. It's all the way up to a -5 in some places. You
Yep.
could still scrounge up a 4 if you're doing some line chopping, but it's definitely on the move to 5, and it looks like there's jumping right now. And I just want to say one thing real quick. I'm on Spank odds right now, and I really, really like being able to pull up the limits that a
Oh
book will
yeah.
take. And BetUS just added that to Spank odds here in the last week. If you hover it over it, you can see the line they're taking. And right now they've got 4.5. They're taking 500, 500, and 1,000. So pretty good deal there.
Not too
But
shabby. Yeah.
very nice, very nice situation. I'm going to differ with you a little bit here. I was not happy about Texas A&M losing to Notre Dame, and then the Notre Dame fiasco. I know Florida had problems with Miami, but gosh, I like Florida here in the swamp if you're going to give me those kind of points.
I could understand that. So obviously A&M's offense not very good at throwing the football. Right now they were number 112 in PPA per pass. That's predicted points added per pass. Uh, their passing success rate is number 96. Explosive passing, they are dead last in the entire country. Um, but when it comes to running the football, number 34 in PPA per rush. They are number 9 in rushing success rate. Florida's defense is number 113 in rushing success allowed. So that's where I think that A&M can kind of out physical Florida. Uh, but I would not disagree with you on going with the Gators at home. I mean, I feel like Napier is going to get these guys up for at least one of these games. This certainly might be the spot.
I agree with that. Let's go to the second game on our list. This is Oregon, which also had a shocker this last week. And this is why I think people who make numbers have to be a little bit crazy because Oregon should have destroyed them and we're very, very lucky to win. They're taking on Oregon State. What kind of numbers do you have in this one?
So this one might surprise you. This thing opened 13.5. It went out to what, 16.5, I think, is where you can get it right now.
Right now, I'm looking at 16 right now across the
16s.
board.
Yeah, it was. So I got it at 16.5 this morning, and I think it's headed back down now. Um, I I've got Oregon State favored in the game. Like at least stats wise, I've got Oregon State minus 3.85. When it
Mm.
comes to power rating and stats, I've got Oregon only favored by 3.5 points. This Oregon team has not impressed me thus far. Um, they're pretty good on defense, at least at stopping the pass. But when it comes to stopping the run, which is what Oregon State has been good at thus far this season, Oregon State number 30 in PPA per rush and they are number 24 in rushing success rate. Oregon's defense, number 122 in predicted points added per rush allowed. That is terrible. Oregon's defense is number 131 in rushing explosiveness allowed. And that might be an issue. When it comes on the other side, there's nothing about this Oregon offense that has scared me thus far. And you've got Bray, the new head coach for Oregon State. He's a defensive guy. He's the guy that has been running their defense for the past, few years. I think Oregon State's going to be fired up for this one. Like, Oregon is the team that left the Pac-12. You're a program that doesn't know what you're going to do anymore, and these are the guys that you can blame, right? I think they're going to be fired up for this one. It's at home in Corvallis. Yeah. I like Oregon State in this one.
Oh, I can't disagree with anything you said. Oregon State got left out of the big transition with the conferences. Oregon State at home, give me 16 points at home. I can't go any other way.
That's exactly how I felt about it. I feel the exact same way.
The third game on our list right now is playing on YouTube. Cameron got that game started about an hour ago. It's Washington taking on Washington State. Go ahead and give us your numbers on that game.
This one was shocking, right? So it opened Washington -4.5. It's at 4 at a couple of spots now, or maybe it may be across the board at 4. I got it at 4.5. I've got Washington State favored in the game. And so stats-wise, I've got Washington State by like 15.5. Now, granted, who they've played is a little different than who Washington has played. But when it comes to power rating and stats, I mean, I've still got this thing super close. I've got Washington State favored by 2.5 points. So my numbers are a little off the market, but I like the Cougars here. Jake Dickert is an incredible coach, and I'm a fan of their offensive coordinator. I like everything they're doing. Ben Arbuckle is the OC for Washington State, and people think that it's some kind of an air raid system, but that quarterback, John Mateer, I mean, he had almost 200 yards rushing against Texas Tech last week. They didn't really have to worry too much about that situation. This should be a really, really good ball game, and here's the reason why. I've got this thing called the 5 factors rank, and Bill Connolly, who really got me involved in analytics, he had 5 factors for which game or who is going to win a football game. And you've got Washington State at number 25 in the 5 factors rank, and you've got Washington at number 22. So these are two teams that don't turn the ball over, that have a lot of rushing and passing success. They don't do the stupid things, right? Washington State is number 19 in least penalties per game. Washington is actually number 84. Turnover margin, right now, Washington State is number 8 in the country. Washington is number 57. Like, it's all those different things tie in together, and I like Washington State quite a bit. This is another one of those situations where it's the same thing as the Civil War, right? In the Apple Cup, you've got Washington left for the Big Ten. Washington State had to be, they're stuck behind. They don't know what they're going to do with their program. Are they joining the Mountain West, or is somebody else going to call them? Well, these are the guys that you can point at. So this is, I think they're going to be fired up for this one.
I 100% agree with you. And now we're going to talk about the fourth game. This is our potential national championship game here with the Huskers taking on Northern Iowa. And what I'm looking at the board here, nobody's even willing to hang a number on this.
Probably it'll come out on Friday.
Not on Friday. You're right. That's right. So Nebraska right here, this is going to be, everybody's going to think this is a look-ahead game. Nobody's going to worry about that. Nebraska is not looking ahead on anything this year. I think whatever number they hang on Nebraska, and you should never say this, but I'm saying it anyway, whatever number they hang on Nebraska, lay the points.
You really
Nebraska's
think so?
Nebraska's going to score a bunch.
So Northern Iowa has the 4th best defense in FCS. They are ranked number 9 in the FCS polls right now, if I'm not mistaken. It is a bit of a letdown spot because I do think that Matt Rule and that bunch had that last game circled, but it went so well that you didn't really have to do anything in the second half, right? I mean, you had the starters pulled and everything was hunky-dory. Illinois coming up on a Friday, I don't expect them to necessarily run it up per se. But yeah, I mean, Northern Iowa's got a pretty good defense. How about this? I think that Nebraska will have a more difficult time with Northern Iowa than they did with Colorado. Now, the score might be more, but it might take longer to get to that margin. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but Nebraska's going to hang half 100 on it, and I'm
You're
not
probably
entirely
right.
sure. I'm not sure they're going to let Northern Iowa score unless
Now
they have the
that is a
real
concern.
subbed in.
Yeah, that is a concern. Northern Iowa's offense is not exactly something to write home about, but that defense is pretty ferocious. So this will be a good test before Illinois for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk Cameron into substituting for Northern Iowa since we can't play that game, a fantasy game. I don't know if I've talked him into it yet or not. We'll see what happens. But today, starting about an hour ago, he played the Washington versus Washington State game, and the game was unbelievable. I missed the last couple minutes because we were here on the broadcast. But the next game he's broadcasting, it's probably going right now, is Texas A&M versus Florida. So I'm really excited to watch that game as soon as we get done here.
Oh, most certainly.
One more change I want to tell you guys about is I'm having a lot of fun watching these virtual games. And Cameron has a job, so he's not as dedicated to this as I wish he was. He keeps going to work. So we've ordered another PS5. I'm going to be playing these games more often than we have in the past. For example, on Mondays, we're going to play Monday Night Football about noon Pacific time. And then on like Thursdays, we're going to play the Thursday game at noon. So anytime that there's a major NFL or college game, I'm going to go ahead and play the virtual game at noon. And if anybody wants to watch with me, that would be great. Also, I've been contacted. They have a UFC game too. I don't know if we're going to start broadcasting UFC, but Gary, I'm having a lot of fun doing these with you, and I really do appreciate your time.
Well, of course. Yeah, I have a good time with this as well. Again, anytime I get to talk ball, especially with you, I feel pretty good about it.
It was almost as fun as Bet Bash, though, wasn't it?
You got that right. It's not quite the same, but it'll have to do for now.
It'll do until next year at Bet Bash, and we can hang out in person again. But I think that's about all for this show. Again, I'm really impressed you're able to do those numbers. It's not something I could do, especially with what we looked at today, because if we'd have talked about this a month ago, I would have told you a completely different story.
Exactly.
A completely different story.
We've actually got data points now. We got 2 weeks worth of data. It's a small sample size, but we've at least got something. There's some numbers out there that I can mash and come up with some kind of formula on, right?
Yep, certainly can. And like I said, I really appreciate all that. And our game plan next week will be 8 a.m. Pacific, unless there's another emergency, which I'm really hoping we don't have one.
Fingers crossed, right?
Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. And Gary, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.